Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 202nd Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss bipartisanship in the United States Congress. Is it even possible, and why is it so difficult to achieve? Today's panel begins with Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and the Wadsworth High faculty. Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist. Bryan, bipartisanship is something members of the House and Senate almost all say they favor, but almost never practice. Why is that?
Well, I think that we've moved so far from the middle on each side of the aisle that we're catering now to the extremes, and that never works. I went back in my memory, and I remember Ronald Reagan working with Tip O'Neill in the House and the Senate, and they worked on things together. Everybody, was happy about things. Everybody had to give. I think compromise now has become a very negative. There's a negative connotation to it, that if you compromise, you're giving up somehow on your standards. And the hill that people are willing to die on now has become just a molehill. There's every little thing that comes down the pike is inflammatory, and they've got to have it. And we really have to rein in this catering to the extremes. And everybody has a sacred cow that they have to be willing to lay on the altar of compromise, whatever that is, on left or right. And I think that's where we need to start. There's plenty of blame to go around. You can look on the left and you can look on the right, and there's just ample evidence that we have drifted. Maybe not drifted. I think we have just in lockstep gone so far to the left and so far to the right that it's not doing the country any good. I think if the group here, we could probably solve the immigration problem with maybe two of these programs. I think cooler heads prevail, but what happens is they get in these groups, and it's one of those situations where if you're not with us, you're against us, and you can't be, for something that might not be as stringent for another. If you're not for the Green New Deal, then you're against all environmentalists. If you're not for sensible, gun measures, then you're against us. It's just so polarized that we really need to step back and say, for the good of the country, there are things that have to happen. And a good example is in our city. You might run as a Republican or as a Democrat, but at the end of the day, I'm sure Patty can speak to this, and I've seen it, firsthand. It's for the good of the city. And sometimes it might not be the best thing for a small little group on the left or on the right, but it's what needs to happen with the city. So I think we need to start by looking at each of the sacred cows that are out there and saying that, we're willing to sacrifice this. Let's get back to the middle, and let's start talking about we as Americans and how we want the country to run, and governing from the middle instead of governing from the extremes.
You mentioned the Reagan and Tip O'Neill, but you could also say the same thing for Clinton and Gingrich.
Yeah.
They did a fine job of working together. Patty, what do you think?
Yeah, I really agree with everything that Bryan has said. This could be a first, Bryan. But and what I've seen is that we no longer have a moderate or have moderates within our Congress. It's almost like that is a dirty word. And what we are replacing moderates with are those from the extreme. In our recent election and the recent primaries that we've had, how many, and particularly on the Republican side, how many Republicans that actually were considered strong conservatives have now been primaried and hoisted out of their position because they didn't support, for example, the fact that Trump did not win the election, or Trump did win the election. That's what they think. And that's very, very unfortunate. You have people like Liz Cheney, who is, I have never in my lifetime considered Liz Cheney to be anything but a very strong conservative. She voted with Trump, I think it was like 92.5% of the time. And because of her vote on the impeachment, because of her beliefs of that one party, she was actually kicked out of the Republican Party in Wyoming, and they've censored her, and she will be ran against and will probably lose her seat. You see it on the left with someone like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema of Arizona, who have views that I don't particularly agree with. They are part of the Democratic Party, but there are people that are calling for them to drop out of the Democratic Party when they're simply representing their states. I mean, if you look at Joe Manchin, he's representing West Virginia, and a West Virginia Democrat is not the same as a New York Democrat. And people have to realize that he's representing his state. I don't agree with everything he does, and I'm not sure that all of his motives are legitimate, but I don't think that we should run out and primary him. We need those moderates within these bodies in order to come to sensible, decisions. That's why we have so much trouble coming to compromise. The recent bill on gun control. Now, in my mind, it is way too weak. I think it should have done more, but at least we started some compromise. I think had we had more moderates, we would have had or produced a much more workable bill that was going to have some real impact and could represent both sides that are involved. Another thing that may need to be done is, we may need to, I would think that if they changed the length of the term for the House of Representatives from 2 years and made it longer, make it 4 years, that House member of the House of Representatives gets into that spot and they immediately have to start fundraising for their next election. And they are so worried about angering their base that they have to toe that party line and not compromise, which would, in many's mind, show them as being weak or not supportive of their party, rather than actually work on good, sensible legislation that would enable, things to get done. All of that is a problem.
I think that, Ron, I just want to double back on something that Patty said. I've often thought the 2-year term was way too short, particularly since the parties put limits on their members to make so many phone calls a day to
Required to, yeah.
to generate money. What is the reason given for not wanting to have a 4-year term for congressman?
I think the only reason I've ever heard is that that's the way the Constitution set it up, so we're not going to change it. I know even in Wadsworth, we had a bill, was when I first went on to council, so it's been probably 10 years now, to extend the length of council terms from 2 years to 4 years. And the biggest concern is that people wanted to have, and it was voted down overwhelmingly. And the biggest concern is people want to have a say to get rid of members of council if they don't agree with them, and they don't want to have to wait 4 years. And that might be the same thing with the U.S. House of Representatives. If they don't like what their representative is doing, they don't want to have to wait 4 years in order to remove them from office.
That seems like a bad reason to me.
I would agree.
Ron, what are your thoughts?
I don't have a whole lot to add to this. I don't think that there's a future at this moment for bipartisanship at all. I mean, look at what's happening. You mentioned Liz Cheney about Representative Gonzalez, who voted for impeachment, and now he's out. And he realized with the writing on the wall there, he just had to quit. So, and he did. And I was really quite impressed with him. I thought he was a very moderate voice in the party, and it was worth listening to. I got his newsletter, and I read that however often he published it, and good man. Again, Liz Cheney is another great example of that. This woman was just Mrs. Republican. I mean, gosh, now what have they done to her? Because she's voting with her conscience, she's going with her conscience. Well, I don't know. You mentioned the Newt Gingrich, and I've heard it said that some of this started, and I don't think this is true, but it started with his idea that representatives should go home on weekends and just pretty much try to eliminate the collegiality of the House and the Senate by not allowing folks chance to mingle and talk and get to know each other personally, as well as on the floor of the Senate or the House. I don't know if that's true.
Well, I've heard it and I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful hard to get mad at the guy that you spent the afternoon at a Little League game with.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it didn't. And there have been some lip service to it. I remember when Mr. Renassi first took office, he started a group of freshman congressmen. They were going to get together and talk and discuss, get to know each other. And then I never heard anything more about it. Apparently it died on the vine or something. But I think individuals come in with good intentions and think they'll make a difference. And how can I do that? But you're right. I mean, it seems to be right now more prevalent in the Republican Party. At least we Democrats hear about it a lot, but I'm not sure it's true. I mean, we got the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warrens and on jumping around on the left, and you got the Marjorie Taylor Greens, who I think is mad, but it's just there. And now I wonder, is the Congress reflecting the will of the constituency, or the constituency being led by the Congress? And it's maybe a little bit difficult to tell. Hey, Bryan and John, you're a couple of Republicans I know pretty well by now, and you don't sound like any of those people. And I'm happy for that. And I don't know how widespread it is. On the other hand, I keep bringing up the example that up the street from me is a guy that has, up until recently at least, had a sign in his yard that says, "Remember Benghazi." Now, what's going on with that? What's happening in people's minds that they can't see past their, in Bryan's words, their sacred cow, and get rid of that thing. Put a bell on it so at least we hear it coming. and do that. I don't know. I don't have any. One of the many mysteries of life, like quantum thermodynamics and the Big Bang, that I don't have a good explanation for. So there you go.
It seems to me there was a period of time, I think during the Reagan administration, where the Republicans controlled Congress for the first time in 40 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. And that during the Nixon administration, Nixon was able to pass a complete 21 point program that was largely a liberal program.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, it passed the Democrat Congress until he got up to the point of wanting to have a national health insurance, and Ted Kennedy just couldn't stand him going that far. But I have to ask the question: do we really want bipartisanship? It sounds very good. It sounds like we're all doing a kumbaya and getting along together and all that. But we do have different views on things. Gun control, for one. There are an awful lot of people that just could not find a bipartisan path to any kind of gun control. And there are other issues like that. I think the whole race gambit is bound to be polarized forever.
Well, I agree that I think people should be passionate about what they believe. I think they should be. There's not worth living if you're not passionate about your views. On the other hand, you got to learn to recognize the truth in the other side. And I mean, compromise has been cynically said. It means neither side gets what they want at all. You know, nobody wins. But that's not true. And I think that in personal relationships as well as in public sector, we need compromise. We need agreement. We need to come together someplace in the middle, whether it be left or right, or left or a little bit left or a little bit right. We need to come together in some way. And I don't know. I don't see it happening in Congress right now.
Well, the thing is, I somehow, and I don't know if someone did this to me or not, but I'm on these Democratic texting and email lists. I get inundated every day from text messages and emails from Nancy Pelosi. And she's raising a ton of money on every firebrand issue that is out there.
Yeah.
I get, save this seat over here. I mean, it's crazy. And I'm sure on the right hand, the Republicans are doing the same thing. And that just drives people. That just drives people further and farther away from the middle, is when every issue is the hill they've got to die on, and the world is going to end if we don't get our way. And it's like that little kid, having a tantrum when you're standing in the aisle, waiting to check out at Bueller's or Giant Eagle. And it's like, do you just give it to him so he shuts up, or do you drag him out of the store? Well, I drag him out of the store. But, it's every issue is just a firebrand issue. You name it, and we've got to have it our way or no way.
Do you actually read those emails?
I'm interested in them. I'm interested in seeing what they're saying about the poor people on the right, which they're all, as far as Nancy's concerned, they're pretty much all devils, and we're just waiting to see the tail and the horns. And it doesn't help the situation. It's not helpful. We've lost civility, and I see Patty. I say hello to Patty. I see Ron. I see the beautiful bowls that he makes. And I know we don't agree 100% politically, but I don't hate them. I don't despise them. I don't want ill to come to them. And
you're not going to give him a MAGA hat for his birthday, are you?
No, I'm not going to. And he's probably not going to give me a pen that has a donkey inscribed on it or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But we can get along. And I
have an Obama hat you could have if you want it.
Yeah.
I think a prime example of all of this is the January 6th committee hearings that are going on right now. If you talk about, it is bipartisan because you do have Republicans on it.
Oh, not really.
Well, consider the fact that when that committee was first brought up, it was originally suggested that there be as many Republicans as Democrats. The Republicans said, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to be any part of it whatsoever.
Oh, I
So
didn't know.
the Democrats went ahead, set up the committee, and then got 2 Republicans to go on it. The Republicans are saying, well, they wouldn't let our people go on. Well, one of the ones they wanted on it was Jim Jordan. And the Democrats said, well, no, we don't want him on because he's probably going to be called as a witness. And he has been, but he's just refused the subpoena that he's gotten to be on it. So, and my point being that you look at the coverage of it, and I've watched, the hearings that have been publicized so far, the 2 that have been on the air, and I've looked at the coverage. I noticed Fox News spent 1 minute, and they're always good about saying how little time Democrats spend on topics. They spent 1 minute on that topic the other day. And they just mentioned it. And the clip they showed was really, it was not consequential. The Democrats are trying to push this. we need, the thing is, I think we all should agree that that is a topic that needs to be looked at and needs to be examined. And because of partisanship, it's not being looked at in the way that it should be.
Well, I want to get into Wayback Machine for just a minute and go way back to the 60s and Lyndon Johnson. He inherited the beginning of a war. We didn't really have any troops fighting in Vietnam under Kennedy. I think we had some advisors or
We
something
had
like
advisors there, yeah.
that. But the fact was that I guess it was the Dulles Doctrine that said that we would oppose with power any attempted expansion of communism anywhere in the world. And the North Vietnamese communists were invading the South and so forth. So there was a lot of popular support in the United States to us going into Vietnam with military troops to keep the communists above whatever parallel was there at the time.
38.
That was Korea. 38th parallel?
Yeah, same parallel.
Was it really? Okay.
I believe so.
I
I'm
didn't-
not sure about that.
I didn't know that.
doesn't really matter what the number is. But the fact is, it was a very, very popular thing for Johnson to do. In less than 4 years, he decided his popularity had waned so far that he wasn't going to run for president again, although he spent 4 years doing the people's will so he could get reelected. But there was a very large bipartisan support for the war in Vietnam until it was going badly and we saw it all on television. And I think that the Nixon era, I'm not sure what got into Nixon. He put out a complete left-wing agenda, and of course it passed through the Democrat Congress up to a point. But I'm not sure that I'm not sold on the idea that bipartisanship is a good idea. What I am sold on is
I would disagree. I think bipartisanship has worked in the past. The unfortunate thing with social media is now we're governing by Twitter, we're governing by, TikTok and Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And a small group of people make a bunch of noise, and next thing you know, people are getting canceled, laws are getting passed. And I just think we need to go back. We need to have a way back thing and say, guys, we can't go on this way, just constantly throwing grenades at each other and expect the country to survive, because it's polarizing and it creates such a gap. It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to be constantly worked up and angry at each other. It's just not healthy.
okay. Well, we're four geniuses. How can we make it happen?
We need to elect people that have character and honor.
Yeah.
And until we do that, it's not going to happen, because unfortunately, there's too many people on the political side that have no character and
Yeah.
have no honor.
Those are the only ones that their party will support.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
and that's
it's
who's
sad.
getting,
You're-
if I say a particular view that somebody else, that my party really believes in, then just ignore all of my fallacies, everything I've ever done wrong, and elect me. And if you have no character or honor, you cannot count on that person to do anything that is right for this country.
I would elect you no matter what you had in your background that I don't know about. I think you're one super politician. I would love to have you in leadership.
Thank you.
First woman president, Patty. Go for it.
There you go.
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't know if we have a future in this country with any kind of peaceful coexistence. I just don't see it happen. I think the major media, the social media and all has maybe put us into a totally different realm, and that I'm not sure we can get out of it. Maybe
I
we
have hope and faith in the country. You know, I've been reading a lot of books about, you know, that are history based, you know, about George Washington, Ulysses Grant. Politics is always like making sausage. It's always messy. It's just that now we have it. They spread it all over the place through social media. And I think we need to step back from that and take a look and say, where do we go from here? I still believe in the American dream. And I think it works. We just have to get back to the center a little more. And I'm pretty sure it's gonna, you know, we overshoot the mark usually left or right, and it comes back. So I have faith.
Oh, I long for the days of Huntley Brinkley and Walter Cronkite. That kind of, I remember when the evening news went from 15 minutes to a half hour. That was a big deal.
And LBJ hated Walter Cronkite. When Walter
Well,
Cronkite started daily giving the death
Oh,
count,
right.
LBJ went through the roof. And if you go down to his ranch in Texas, we visited that, they have all of his telephone calls recorded, and you pick up the phone and you listen to him just scream about Walter Cronkite and the language that he used.
yeah.
He was known for being quite salty.
Yes,
Well,
very salty.
I think we've just about used up our time right
Yeah,
now.
it's good seeing you.
Thank you very much, and we'll be seeing you in 2
Yep.
weeks.
Next
Very good.
Tuesday, the Blue Tip.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.